It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguza.
Hey everyone. Welcome to the VO Boss Podcast and the Boss Superpower Series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and I am back in the booth with the lovely, illustrious Lau Lapides.
Oh,
hey, Lau.
Hey, girl. Nice to see you. Love being back.
I know. I feel like it's been an age. I feel like we just haven't seen each other in a while. But yet we did just see each other at VO Atlanta, and it was not enough time. The two of us were so insanely busy that I feel like I didn't get enough quality time with you or quality time with anybody. Oh, goodness.
And that's really funny when you think about it, because when you go to a conference, especially those of us who are going in and we're speaking and we're facilitating, part of the reason why we go is not just to educate, but also to meet people and talk and have conversations. And I'm telling you, between the sound, the noise factor, the lights, the running around, the coffee. I don't know about you, but I'm taking many naps.
The coffee. I love it. I love it.
The coffee. It's a lot. It's a lot on you at once in a very short amount of time, right? But we did learn a lot, didn't we?
We did. We definitely did. One of the panels that was brought up, and I don't know if this discussion should be entirely about this, one of the discussions that came up was about a business that most of us are familiar with, that in the very beginning of this voiceover industry emerged as a top player in the pay-to-play space, who had some questionable business practices and ethics. And I think that that is a really wonderful topic to talk about your clients and business ethics and how you choose to work with your clients or not work with your clients depending on, let's say, their business practices or even your own. Have you taken a look at your own business practices? Are they ethical? Where do you stand on that? And I think that here's the elephant in the room. So the CEO of voices.com was present on a panel at VO Atlanta, and the very first thing that J. Michael asked him to do was to apologize to the community on behalf of his company on the way that he treated the community in terms of maybe double, triple dipping into the funds that voice talent pay to be on that platform. And I thought I'd ask what your thoughts are and what your knowledge is of voices.com and their past business practices.
Right. Well, I think, we're all in the know about that. It's a large industry, but it's a small industry. If you stay in this industry, probably like many others, for your lifetime and you're in it, you really learn a lot and you know a lot and you know a lot of people. It's very, in a facetious way, it's very incestuous in that it's a family-driven business where our friends are like our family and we treat our clients like our family and we really get to know one another quite closely. And one of the issues that we're talking about now, especially with voices.com, is really just taking care of one another and being aware of best business practices that you want to have as your guiding light for your business, right? And voices.com really for a long time has really gone down the path, the dark path, right? The dark web or whatever they call that, a dark path, the deep path of nefarious business practices that have caught on very early. And now I think most people know about it unless they're just coming into the business. And you and I feel the same way. We're just not for it. We're not for working hard and working ethically and working with integrity and working for clients, but not doing it under fair practices.
Well, back in the day, voices.com, when they emerged, actually, I believe the very first platform to emerge was, outside of Freelancer and those types of platforms, was Voice123. And I remember I was an early adopter of Voice123. And then Voices.com came along not too long after that. And the owner of that company, the Cicerellis, David and Stephanie, I believe it's, Cicerelli, were well known in the community and used to show up to VO Atlanta and the conferences. And they really made a stake in the pay-to-play and became a popular pay-to-play in the industry. And along the way, somewhere, I can't even say exactly when it happened, but along the way, there became like a fee that was known as the pay-to-play is developed. You would pay a fee to belong to it. And so that would give you the opportunities to audition. And then there was this thing that they introduced called escrow. And escrow was if you wanted to make sure that you got paid, then voices.com would hold that payment for you. And then when the job was completed, they would then release that payment. And so as a fee for that holding, right, the escrow, they would receive a fee. And so I remember at that time, people were kind of like, I think after a year or so of that, people started to question that. Isn't that double dipping? It's like you're charging the talent twice. They've already paid to belong to the platform, and now you're charging an escrow fee on top of that in order to hold the money. But it was a guarantee that you would get paid. So consider them like a bank. Right? So first of all, let me ask you your opinion of that. Do you think that that is a fair and ethical practice for a business?
No.
Okay. And do you think that is
I
considered
don't.
double dipping?
I do. I do. I absolutely do. You know, it's funny. This was me in my early naive mind. I always thought of those platforms as online agencies in a certain way, because what they're doing is they're matchmaking. They're presenting clients to you that you're not going to get on your own, most likely. You're not going to meet on your own. And they're presenting it in a way where they do not want you to go private with those clients.
Sure.
In other words, they don't want you to acquire those clients offline. They want you to stay within the platform and use them as the agent. So I'll call them an agency. They don't call themselves an agency, but that's the same premise, right? But a legitimate agency does not charge you anything to be with them. They're going to take their commission off your booking. So it's a totally different business model, and therefore they're not an agency.
So interesting. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say, not coming from the agency world, right? But coming from the business world, right? The escrow was an option at that point. You did not have to decide to put money in escrow, but if you decided to put your faith in them and use the escrow model, they would then take a fee on top of that. So let's say it wasn't an agency. Let's say it was a bank fee, right? Would you agree then, if you thought of it that way and you weren't thinking of them as an agency, in order for you to belong to the platform, they provided you, maybe not matchmaking, but they provided opportunities for you. I mean, they were matchmaking through the algorithm, so to speak. But as a business, as strictly as a business, not thinking of it as an agency, as a business, they were providing you with opportunities. So you paid for that on a yearly basis or whatever, a monthly basis. And then if you wanted them to guarantee the money and hold on to the money, because if the client didn't pay them, well, they still had to pay you. Then you would pay a fee. Would you then think of that as double dipping?
Well, I'll tell you, that's an interesting question. That's a yes and a no answer, but I would put it right back to the audience, and I would say, you're purchasing a product. When you purchase a platform, a service like that, you're purchasing a product. Why not put it in the hands of the consumer to opt in? Say, yes, I want to use you as my bank. Yes, I want that security and that guarantee, and I'm going to pay you an extra 20% for that, or I'm going to allow you to take twice for that.
What they perceived it to be, right?
Or I want to opt out of that.
Yeah,
I don't want that service. I'm willing to take the incurred risk.
And they allowed that. They allowed that in the beginning. I do remember that.
That is okay. I'll go down that road with them because I'm paying for a service. I'm paying for a platform service, and those are valued leads. I get that. It's legitimate. It's valued leads. I'm getting bookings. Perfect. But still the control is in my hands.
Exactly.
When they took that away, when they take that option away, then the nature of it changes in the mind of the consumer. So to me, it's not an easy yes or no. It's more like, how much control do I have when I'm working with that partner? What do you think, Annie?
Well, I think because I remember seeing it evolve, right? And it evolved slowly over time. So I think in a lot of instances, they thought that the evolution of those policies and practices would not be noticed by the community. Now, I believe once they decided to not allow people to take customers off the platform, right? That became more, how were they going to enforce it, right? So in order to enforce it, escrow became like non-negotiable. It was a thing that they did. And so they took control of that. Now, a few years down the road, right? Then it turned out to be managed projects. Now, on top of that, right, as a service, they would manage the entire project in case it was a larger project and you needed to cast, let's say, multiple roles, or it ended up being a long-term project. They would manage the project. And then there was a fee on top of that. It was no straightforward fee. At this point, it was, it was a separate negotiation between voices.com and the client for a particular amount of money, which they did not then disclose to the member or the voice talent that got the job, right? Then they became the company that managed the job and paid the voice talent and paid their own employees to manage that job, which there's a certain overhead in managing a job like that. I've been a project manager.
Yeah, they're casting.
Yep,
They're casting.
absolutely.
They're doing project
They're
management.
taking care of the money.
They're doing reach out for the leads.
Exactly.
They're getting the leads in, right?
So there's an additional fee. So now to some people in the industry, not even thinking about that's triple dipping. And your thoughts on that?
I agree. Yes. Yes.
At that point, because there's no control left for the voice talent, right?
Yes, correct.
I'm on that side. At this point, when you don't offer the talent an option to opt out of escrow, now, theoretically, you don't have to accept a managed job, right? You do not have to accept a managed job. So see how they played the edge? They played the edge of, I would say, good business ethics and good business practices.
Yes.
But not unlike a lot of big companies out there who maybe you're not so privy. It's just because they're managing like income that you are generating. Think about it, right?
They took your choices away. That's what they did.
Well, they really didn't take your choice away on a managed job. They did not.
Okay,
right?
But let me ask you this question. I don't know how many tiers they have. I have a client that recently showed me something like 6 or 7 tiers or 8 tiers of options of different levels. Well, why aren't you doing that on the other end? Just give us the option of the tiers of involvement that we want to have you as a partner. So if I'm early, I don't know what I'm doing, I need all the help in the world, I might go for a higher tier because I'm going to want you to manage everything. I'm going to want you to bank the money. I'm going to want you to take care of me and hold my hand. But if I'm into it 5 or 10 years, I don't need that because I know the practice. I understand how to take care of myself and take the calculated risk. But the option could easily be there. They're offering all these tiers for the membership itself.
So I think when it comes down to it, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate, right? I don't want people to say, oh my God, she loves voices.com. But honestly, from a business standpoint, right? I do believe if you've not given the talent an opportunity to opt out of things, then you are triple dipping. However, they kept it right on the edge there, where at one point, and I'm not exactly sure, forgive me for not knowing this, I'm not exactly sure about the escrow anymore. I don't know if that's an option or not anymore, or if it's now like standard that they will pay you.
I don't know if that ever an option.
Oh, it was. It absolutely was an option in the very beginning.
That was a long time ago. It was
back in 2000.
That was early.
Because I remember joining Voice 123
that was a
back
long
in
time ago.
2004, maybe even earlier than that. I can't remember. In the early 2000s, but it was an option. You did not have to choose escrow.
Right.
And so I believe that if that's not an option anymore, they're definitely double dipping. And I think with the managed, absolutely. With the managed, so there are people who say they should give up the yearly fee, right, for providing opportunities, or the membership fee, or they should give up the escrow, or they should give up the managed fee.
Right.
Any one of those. And so I do not know exactly what the new CEO at voices.com said in the panel, because I had to go teach my own X session at the time, but he did indeed apologize on behalf of the company. So here's my question, Lau. What do you feel about an apology made? And of course, he was not CEO of the company back then. He had no prior knowledge of what was happening. He doesn't even come from a voiceover background. What is your thought about the apology?
Well, I treat it the same as any business, and certainly as politics as well. I think he's a front man.
Yeah.
I think he's probably diplomat in certain ways as a leader, and someone who knows it is the right and ethical thing to do and what is expected of a community that he does not want to lose the partnership with. Right. So is it honest? I don't know. Is it meant to be followed through? Who knows? And is there going to be a policy change? We will only know once we see it. It could be completely empty. It could be completely to satisfy the emotional feelings of talent, which, quite frankly, at the end of the day, doesn't mean very much if there's no policy change. So I say wait and see. Does anything change after that? I think it was a good first move on his part.
I agree.
It was a smart chess move. It was no skin off his nose. He probably doesn't even know what voiceover does for the most part.
And everybody's like, well, he took a beating. And I'm like, well, I mean, gosh, remember Rolf a few years back from Voice 123, every time he came on stage, he took a beating. And I remember seeing Rolf this year and saying, wow, Rolf, at least you won't get the brunt of it this year. And he laughed.
Exactly. And you know what, Annie? I have
He
to
said
say,
that's what a CEO does.
let me tell you, these Wall Street type cats could care less. In fact, they plan those for their Saturday morning. They have a ball at target practice. No one knows, no one understands like what a boardroom is like unless they lived in a boardroom or lived in corporate America or lived in executive C fights. Like no one gets that. I remember my husband, who's now a CFO controller type, he said, boy, when I was coming up the reins, and I was already a controller at that, I was dealing with ownership of a company, and they would literally get up and throw a vase of flowers at me, and it would hit the wall and crash. Literally, they would throw things at each other. So I really
it's dog
think,
eat dog kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's like, we want to feel as talent satisfied that we got some comeuppance in the deal.
Well, I'm sorry.
But
oh
the
my
truth
God, I
is,
just rolled
it's no
my
big
eyes.
deal.
If you guys, I mean, guys,
that'll be $1.50.
I love the voiceover community. Do not get me wrong, but sometimes the drama. Okay, I'm just saying, we've got to remember, guys, we are dealing with businesses. When we deal with these platforms and when we deal with our clients, they are businesses. And in reality, in our own little bubble, we may think, you know what I mean, that, oh my God, yes. And I want to say, you know, I'd love for everybody to be human and say, yes, they need to be good people and good humans and ethical. But gosh, it's not that way in a lot of places.
It's not that way.
You have to open your eyes and be savvy and be smart when you are dealing with businesses that, now, for me, and I would say, Lau, you too, I mean, do I want to deal with a business that I feel has questionable ethics and practices? No, I don't. I am fortunate that in my business, I'm not dependent on that money. So I can choose who I work with. And I think that's the really wonderful thing about us and our industry, that you can choose who you work with, right? And for me, that's always been where I felt like I won the corporate game. If I was working for a particular company, and I work with a lot of students who they work in the corporate world, and at some point they all want to get out of it because they don't feel appreciated or loved, or they do a lot of, and they're working for someone else. And now that we have the option to work for ourselves, first of all, I think we're the hardest CEOs, but also we have choices as to who our clients are. So we can absolutely choose not to work with somebody who we feel that their business practices are questionable. That gives you more time to look for people who are, right? And get that business with somebody else.
Exactly. And to piggyback right onto that, I was talking to a client this week who is also in my agency as well, and who said, listen, I have a friend and he's on Fiverr. And he came to me, and we're actually accountability buddies. And I told him everything I thought about this. And he said, but Lau, I don't know. Did I do the right thing? What do you think about that? What do you think about what he's doing? This, that, and
what, to be a friend with somebody on Fiverr?
Well, no, what he's saying is he came to this person and he said, what do you think of me being on Fiverr? I know that it has some dark imagery in the business and people are dissuaded away. What do you think? So I said, here's what I said. And I had to be a diplomat as well, because I'm not here to wreck businesses and give businesses a bad reputation. But here's what I said. And I honestly believe this. I said, listen, whether your friend goes on Fiverr or not, or a million other platforms or not, you're the accountability buddy, which is terrific. Keep them a checks and balance. And remember this, that exactly what you're saying, Annie, your business is your business. It's yours.
Absolutely.
It belongs to you. It's private to some degree. It puts food on your table. It makes you happy and sleep at night. You're an artist. You're a business person, but you're an artist. And I don't want to sit in judgment and jury of other artists. I don't want to censor their moves. I say you do what works for your business. Now, if you want to go into areas that are illegal, criminal, whatever, I'm not going to go there. That's just not where I'm going to go. It's not what I do and what I'm about or what my personhood or brand is about. But I don't want to judge anyone. I don't want to be in judgment of anyone, because I feel like they're the ones at the end of the day who have to get up in the morning and go through a whole day supporting their business. And I don't know what their lives are like, right? They might be poor. They might have no money in the bank. They might say, Lau, I can't even afford a simple ad in like a, whatever. And I said, well, listen, you do what works for you, and that's going to bring you to the next thing. I mean, that's just the way I roll. You know what I mean? It's the same discussion we've had about FICOR, about financial core. We get a lot of people. I just got an email this morning from someone who's in my class who said, I went SAG, and Law, I need your help now. I need your help. I want to go FICOR. I'm a little conflicted. I don't know what to do, how to do it. I know the union doesn't want to talk to me about it.
Of course.
Right? And I say, listen, you know, there's pros and cons to every choice you make. But as a coach, because I'm still a coach, I'm going to talk to you and educate you about what your choices are.
Absolutely.
And then you go and make your choices. And I'll support you in the choices you make. It doesn't mean I agree with them. It means I support you.
Absolutely.
Right? And isn't that at the end of the day, Annie, where we want to go is like, we're not always going to agree with, this has been a big ethical for week. I had another from my roster. He emailed me about an AI company that reached out to him and wanted to work with him. He said, number one, is this legitimate? Is it a scam? And number two, I don't like it. I don't like their rates. I don't like the usage. I don't like, and I said, well, go with your gut.
Absolutely.
Go with what you feel. Otherwise, you won't be happy.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'm going to say that I do believe that when a company is not acting in an ethical manner, I do believe it's important that people speak up and speak their mind about it, because that is the only way that change will become enforced or change can happen if there are enough voices that are raised up about it. So I do believe organizations like NAVA, even the Facebook groups, and again, like I said, I say there's so much drama, but I mean, we are creatives. I mean, there is drama in our world, but I also want bosses out there to, embrace your creative and embrace your drama, but also embrace the business aspect of things and try to understand that it's not an affront against you personally. I mean, voices.com, did they insult you personally by charging a fee? I mean, it can infuriate you, absolutely, but it wasn't a personal attack. However, it is up to you to educate yourself on the practices of any given business and then decide whether that is something you want to support or not. And if you feel that you're being taken advantage of, absolutely, I say raise your voice. But I don't say raise your voice and stomp off like a spoiled little child that's not getting your way. But raise your voice in an educated and smart way that can help to promote change, I would say, or promote awareness in the industry, which is what voboss I set out to do, was to provide a resource for the community so that we could talk about things like this and it could be open and we could discuss. And I will be the first to say, there's many of you who know the voboss podcast from the very beginning, and there was a question. There was a question of certain people that I had on my podcast, whether they were ethical. Now, I was not educated at the time, and that could be something that people may or may not believe is true. However, at the time, I was not educated about business practices. And once I did become educated about the business practices, I made a choice. I made a choice to not necessarily work again with that company so that I could feel good about who I was and who I felt the voboss brand represented. And it was tough. I will tell you, it was tough.
It's very difficult. And I would say, too, I'm going to pull this out of our industry for a moment and pull it into other industries that we're interfacing with every day. So let's say you're buying items, retail items from big box stores, right? Let's say you're going to Target, Walmart, or a Macy's or a Nordstrom's, whatever, and you walk in, I'm going to guarantee you are paying 50 to 100% over retail in terms of the profit margins that they are charging you.
Point.
But somehow, many of us go, well, you know, and are you going to go to the manager and you're going to complain about that? The manager will say, hey, with all due respect, ma'am, I don't make decisions. You got to go up. Are you going to spend all day? I'm asking a real question to the audience. Are you going to spend all day, every day, fighting that good fight, even though you're right, fighting that good fight to get to corporate, to get to the CEO, to make sure the prices come down, to make sure they're affordable? Probably not.
I love that you brought that up, Lau.
Probably, but one more thing I want to say, and I'm not talking about boycotting, that's up to you. I'm not suggesting that in any way. I'm just saying, we make ethical decisions every day of our lives, all day long. Where am I going to go to the gas station? Am I going to pay that for gasoline? Am I going to whatever? So everything you could be fighting, I think there is a level of toleration we have to find in our lives to stay happy and healthy, knowing knowing we're being taken for a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you made that comparison. That is so, so important because I think we're in such a bubble and we think that everything's an affront to us personally, and it's not. It is business in this country. I mean, so we ourselves are free to set our prices. Right? We are free to set our prices. Yes. And so what if the tables were turned and somebody said, well, that's not ethical? I mean, in a very weird sense, right? If you think about AI and you think about synthetic voices and people's value of, okay, what is a voice worth? Now, my human voice and my acting and my personal brand is worth a lot. That's where I will make that bold statement to say, this is what I charge, this is what I'm worth. However, there will be people who need a voice that may not see the value, right, for their project for a human voice. Yes. They don't have a need for it, right? And they make that choice not to work with us. And so, again, we are in the free societies where we can make our price, and the rebellion against us, right, or the speaking up against us is, hey, we don't have that budget, or we don't feel the value is there to pay that amount of money for a voice. I mean, I hate to sound so cold, but that's just the reality of business.
That's the reality of it. When you deal with people and you deal with budgets, you're going to run up against the same thing. I had a client of mine in my roster that said, Lau, I need your thought because I have a long time client. And she's just not going to pay me what I'm asking. She's not going to pay me what I'm worth. Yeah. She's not going to, what should I do? Should I walk away from it at this point or should I stay with her? Whatever. We talked that through. But the point is, that's your world. That's our world. That's business.
Yep. That's what we do every day.
That's not going to go away. I mean, whether you call that unethical or not, I'm not sure. But thousands of years ago, I'm sure we were being overpriced for fish and beef and meat on the open market. You had to haggle. Yeah. You had to negotiate. Yeah. You had to figure out what you're willing to pay for that item. And there's also supply and demand. Right. So when you have a tremendous supply, you don't always have the demand to meet that. And so therein lies the ethics.
Exactly. And supply and demand has a lot to do with paying me what I'm worth. I mean, honestly, like if there is more demand for our voices, we can afford to pay.
Go higher.
Yes. If there's less demand, then you know what? We've got to kind of compete in the marketplace.
Right. And let me qualify it by saying we're in no way suggesting for the listeners that you need to sell out or you need to do things you don't want to do or you're not comfortable doing. We're saying you live in a world. You live in a world, and no one said that world is going to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
So fair practices, best practices are ones that you set and your client set, and you have what they call a meeting of the minds. And if you don't, and you want to fight for it and it's worth fighting for, then fight for it.
Absolutely.
But just know you got to pick your battles wisely.
Absolutely.
Because you could be fighting all day long, every day.
Yeah, and it can be exhausting. And in the meantime, if you're spending all of your time fighting those battles, then you're not making money in your business.
Right.
So, and again, I always bring it back to this, right? I find value in this. For me, my Chanel lipstick is worth the money that I pay, right? And I always like to bring it back to my Chanel lipstick. But in reality, now I found that the quality of the Chanel lipstick has gone a little bit downhill. And so now I'm on the hunt for something new, right? That can give me the quality that I am willing to pay the price for. So bosses, keep in mind, you will have clients out there that will go out there and hunt for that voice, right? That is the quality that they desire for their project. So you can be that voice and you can, at that point, charge, right? You can charge. As we were mentioning before, it is your option. It is your option. And so ethically, I think it is up to you guys out there to educate yourself, right, on business practices, and then take a deep look at yourself, take a deep look at what it's costing you in your business. Not necessarily, like as Lau was saying before, fighting every single day and taking up a lot of your time and energy in fighting that so that you have no time to have a business.
Yes, you want to choose your battles wisely. And I always like to say, I don't mind losing some battles, and you will throughout your life, but I want to win the war. And what that means is I want to win my business. I want to win overall my business practice and my goals. But that doesn't mean every day is going to be fair and every day is going to come out the way I want it to come out. And, it's like I love Dunkin' Donuts, and when I go through, if I get a donut, that donut is $2 or $3 is half the size now. And you'll say, but Law, with all due respect, you shouldn't be eating donuts. Well, that's beside the point. The point is, I have a choice. Yeah. I'm not talking about health. I'm just talking for fun now. I don't have to buy that donut.
You don't have to pay the
money.
But
am I going to go fight the CEO over the size of it and the cost of it? But probably not, because it's not a battle that I really want to take up.
Wise words, Law. Wow, what a great discussion. I really, really enjoyed it.
So good.
Bosses. So remember, educate yourself and look deep within and pick your battles. So, all right, I'd like to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can connect and network like bosses, like Law and myself. Find out more at IPDTL.com. You guys have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.
Hey, bosses! We are so excited to announce our audition demolition, our third audition demolition, coming up September 20th. That is our live event.
You got to submit this for bloopers, for OVC.
Yeah, right? All right, stop, record.